The call from my service had come a few hours earlier, but I had only just retrieved the message as I got into my vehicle and checked my phone. The meeting wasn't very far, and I recognized the hotel, even knew the concierge, and I could grab a bite and a coffee along the way. I examined my face in the vanity mirror for any blemishes. My last client had been a bit rougher than I preferred, but there were no noticeable signs as I turned my head from side to side. At the diner, I ordered a sandwich and coffee and called my babysitter. "Hi, everything all right?" I paused while she responded. "No, I'll be a bit later than expected, so just use the pull-out bed." "Sure, I'll cover the extra. Thanks. Good night." I refreshed myself in the diner restroom and touched up my makeup, ensuring my lipstick was bold and red before heading back to the car. 5 blocks later, I pulled into the parking lot of the hotel and phoned the front desk. This was a routine precaution. I didn't want to walk into some room and find an oddball or worse. "Hi, may I speak with Mr. Morgan, Mr. Jim Morgan in room 1423? As the operator transferred me to the room, I glanced at my watch. 10:56. With some luck, I'd be home by 12:30. "Hi, Jim. This is Anna. Just wanted to confirm it's all right to come up." His voice sounded a bit shaky, maybe slightly anxious, which was common. Maybe it was his first time, or maybe he was just eager. But as long as he paid, that was all that counted. I locked the car and walked into the hotel, moving through the lobby directly to the elevators, pressing the button for the 14th floor. 2 more years. 2 more years. I'd been repeating that to myself for the past 4 years, but I was still short on the funds I needed to put my daughter through school. On the 14th floor, I stepped out of the elevator and checked my reflection in the mirror on the wall opposite. I looked polished, a classic black dress and heels. Not too high, just enough to add a touch of grace to my calves and ankles. Most people would be checking their reflection on the way down to the bar, or maybe heading out to meet someone. But me? I was going in the opposite direction. I checked my lipstick one final time, then approached the door and knocked twice. 2 steps back, another precaution to avoid being pulled into the room, and I turned on a warm smile. Here we go again. The door was opened by a handsome man and I stepped inside. "Hi there, I'm Jim. Come on in." He stepped aside to let me enter, and I noticed him glance up and down the hallway before closing the door, likely checking if anyone had seen me go in. This wasn't out of the ordinary. Probably just nerves about being spotted inviting someone to his room. If he was visiting from out of town, or a regular client using a safe room, I couldn't imagine who he thought might be watching. So, first impressions? Decent, cute, and well-mannered. I took his hand as he shut the door, holding it lightly. "Hi, Jim," I said, turning toward him. I moved close enough for him to feel my presence, my voice soft. "I'm Anna. It's nice to meet you. Do you have something for me?" As I spoke, I scanned the room and quickly spotted the envelope resting on the dresser. This was the routine. Payment first, everything else later. My agency always made that clear. "Oh, perfect," I said lightly. "It's best to get this out of the way so we can focus on having fun." I walked over to the dresser, opened the envelope, and counted the cash before sliding it into my pocketbook. "So, Jim," I began as I returned to him, pressing my palms against his chest. "Are you just visiting, or—" Something struck me as odd. There was something about him that seemed familiar, though I couldn't place where I'd seen him before. I toyed with the buttons on his shirt. He was fit, mid-30s if I had to guess, about the same age as me. I slipped off my shoes and leaned up to kiss him, just a soft touch on his lips. "So, Jim, what's your story? What brings you to town?" His voice was smooth as he replied. "I'm a lawyer. I just won a big case, so I figured I'd, well, treat myself." "A lawyer, huh? A successful one who just won a big case? Well, it sounds like it's my turn to spoil you, don't you think?" I chuckled softly, leaning in to kiss him again. His hands found their way to my backside, firm but a touch overeager for my liking. I prefer a slower start, easing into things like it's a proper date. It's all part of delivering the real girlfriend experience. Gently, I slid his hands away, guiding him toward the bed with a playful smile. "I'll be sure to keep you in mind if I ever find myself in hot water," I teased. Standing at the edge of the bed, I let my hand trail lightly up the inside of his thigh, stopping just shy of his crotch. "So, Jim," I said with a sly grin, "do you have something specific in mind for your little celebration? Or should I surprise you? We've got all the time we need to make this unforgettable." I stretched up on my tiptoes to whisper in his ear, my breath warm against his skin. "And I can stay as long as you want. No need to rush, right?" I let my lips brush his ear before pressing myself against him again. "All night, if that's what you'd like." This time my hand wandered back up his thigh, continuing until I felt the heat through his trousers. Feels like we might just need all night, don't you agree? Some men jumped at the chance for an extended time immediately. Others needed a little coaxing during the session, and a rare few stuck strictly to their original booking. But it was always worth a shot. Truth be told, the ones who paid for the whole night often just wanted someone to listen to them snore. Still, that was their pride, and their money, on the line. All my words and actions were designed solely to get my clients so excited that not only would they enjoy their time with me, they'd want more. A second hour was always more comfortable than the first. Saved traveling between appointments, and an all-nighter usually meant a good night's rest after the first session, followed by a quick moment in the morning before they had to get to work. But Jim wasn't convinced. Perhaps his lawyer's mindset and caution, or perhaps he thought that my $400 fee for the first hour was enough, although I was sure he could afford more if he wanted to. He chuckled in a knowing sort of way. "Well, I don't know about all night," he replied, "but I do know that right now I'd like to see more of your body." For a moment he looked as if he was going to say something more, a thoughtful frown flickering across his brow as if he'd recalled something. I spoke breathlessly. "Wow, Jim. You know how to make a woman feel alluring." My hand found the clasp of his belt and I pulled it open, the loose end slapping against my hand as I released it. "Why don't you kiss me, Jim?" I reached up to find his mouth and swirled my tongue against his while I slipped my hand inside his shorts. "I think I'd better get you to help me out of my dress, don't you?" And I turned so my back was to him. "Can you manage the zipper for me?" I held my hair aside so Jim could get to the zipper of my dress. Jim exhaled deeply as I did, and feeling his breath on my back, I turned my head to smile at him over my shoulder, but he wanted more, and placing his hands on my shoulders, turned me to face him and then, almost gently, held my face in his hands as he kissed me, our tongues finding each other as they swirled together. He broke the kiss. "Take off the dress." Jim is very excited, both physically and mentally, and there's a powerful, authoritative tone to his voice. I suppose he's accustomed to getting his own way in court, but I'm not being questioned. And I could of course just do as he requests and remove my dress, but most men find it very alluring to see a half-dressed woman, apparently vulnerable and partially exposed, so I place my fingers to his lips. "Shh, Tiger, not so fast. There's no rush." And I returned to his belt, pulling it from the loops of his chinos, then folding it in half before tapping it against my leg. It makes a good thwack as the two halves come together. Then I returned to his chinos, easing the zipper down and moving downward with it until I'm kneeling before him. "My goodness, Jim. You are large, strong," I say, leaning back a little so that I can slip my fingers into the waistband of his shorts. Jim has his hands in my hair, playing with it. "Oh, Anna, that feels so good. Take more of me," he begs. "Do you enjoy that, Jim? Why don't you let me make you feel as if you've been really mischievous because I think you are being naughty tonight, aren't you?" I stand up, my dress still hanging off my shoulder, and I reach behind me to undo the clasp of my bra, letting my breasts fall free. "Tell me how you're being mischievous tonight and we'll keep it our little secret, just between you and me, huh?" I sit on the bed and pat the space beside me. "Come and sit next to me, Jim, and tell me all about how mischievous you're being. It will feel so much better when you do." "Oh, I want to be very naughty with you," he says, sitting next to me. He reaches out and cups my breast, rubbing my nipple with his thumb, and he's surprisingly gentle as he cups my breast, and that's good, even pleasant. Some of the men I meet act like they've purchased my body and can do whatever they like to me. But this one isn't like that. At least, not yet. And I put my hand over his, pressing his fingers against my nipple, which hardens at the touch. See what you've done already. You've got me all excited. With my other hand, I start to unbutton his shirt. So tell me, Jim, is there a Mrs. Jim somewhere? A Mrs. Jim that you're not going to mention tonight? No, no woman in my life right now. None but you. I smile at him. That's very flattering, I like that. I push his shirt off his shoulders. He's well built, fit, and I guess that he keeps in shape. You're very fit, very strong. I think you're going to make me very happy tonight. I break from him and stand, pushing him back onto the bed and tugging at his chinos. If you let me undress you, I'll let you undress me. He laughs. Well, you can undress me, but if you don't mind, I'd rather watch you undress for me. And could you put on those heels again? I love a woman in high heels. He propped himself up on his elbow to watch. I retrieve my shoes and step into them, leaning forward a little as I do to make sure Jim has a good view of my breasts. My dress and bra are already undone, and all I have to do is let the dress slip off my shoulder and slide to the floor over my hips, taking my bra with it. There's no need to utter anything, and I turn so my back is towards him and hook my thumbs into the top of my underwear, glancing over my shoulder as I start to ease them towards my waist. Ready? And saying this, I bend forward so my rear is close to him as I slip my panties off, sliding them down my legs and stepping backward to remove them from my shoe. My body is close to his, and I glance over my shoulder with a slight smirk. All yours, Jim, I say with a playful edge. He grips my hips firmly, his touch confident but not rough, drawing me closer with intent. Sitting on the bed, he leans in, brushing his lips against my shoulder before moving to meet my gaze. His hands move up my back, deliberate and steady, and for a moment, I let myself relax into his control. My hands rest on his shoulders, steadying myself as I'm hit again by the strange sense of familiarity. Like I've known him before, even though I know he's never been one of my clients. His touch moves along my thigh, slow but deliberate, making me instinctively respond. I shift slightly, giving him permission without words, and his fingers trail further. That feels good. I breathe, my voice low but firm. Keep going. There's something about the way he moves, focused yet natural, that allows me to stay in the moment, even as my thoughts churn in the background. The words come out like they do with each client, but somehow, right now, I mean them. I thought if he'll notice the birthmark at the back of my left knee and then think, well, what if he does? I was teased for that as a kid, but that was long ago. And I learned the hard way to keep a guy on the edge in a massage parlor. One of the senior women in the massage parlor ran a call agency, and for a small cut she'd take punters' inquiries and then pass them on to whoever was able to work. She said I had the looks and skills to be a successful escort, just as she'd had when she was younger. I was terrified the first time, but the money was much better, and after the first few it became a job, just as it was tonight with Jim. But that was all a long time ago. As I ease off, he turns and reaches behind him, grabbing a protection that he has along with a few others on the nightstand. He turns back to me, handing me it. Will you do the honors because I need you now? I always use protection with my clients and carry my own supply, but Jim has brought his own, which adds to the feeling I have that this might be his first time with an escort, and I wonder why. Or perhaps that's just the lawyer in him being prepared for any circumstance. He might, of course, just be celebrating as he told me, but why not celebrate with his wife or partner? Or he might need to dominate, to use me, bolstering some insecurity in himself. Or he might just be looking for some good, uncomplicated intimacy. But why isn't a successful, good-looking lawyer getting that at home? It's a mystery. Lie back, I say while doing the deed. Feels good, huh? I say. Oh God, yes. Jim's response lets me know that he likes what I'm doing. I look at him, but his eyes are focused on something else, and glancing over my shoulder I can see that he's watching me in the mirror opposite the end of the bed. Watching me, but also something else. Something that's caught his focus, and then he's looking at me again. Looking at me intently as if he's come to some realization. Our eyes meet, and again for a moment I'm sure that I know Jim. But from where? I've searched my brain and I'm sure that he's never been a client of mine. I'd know anyway as I keep a note of all of them, and there's some that I won't do business with again. And then there's just the odd one, here or there, that I'd almost go with for free. And I'm starting to think that Jim might be one of those. But I keep reminding myself, just 2 more years. Just 2 more years for my daughter's education fund. So even though sometimes I'm tempted, there's no complimentary service. I drag my mind back to the moment, aware that Jim has been enjoying me, and I've been totally oblivious to what's happening. But after so many clients, it's often like this. Oh God, yes, Jim is saying. I have to concentrate for a while, to let him think that he's the best I've ever experienced. There's nothing better than repeat clients. God, yes. We continued for a while. I let out a convincing sigh and collapse onto him, wrapping my arms around his neck. Men often like to believe they've left an impression, so I add a subtle shiver, just enough to sell the moment. Wow, Jim, you're something else, I murmur softly, leaning in to kiss his neck. We lie there briefly before he presses a kiss to my forehead and tilts my chin up to meet his gaze. His expression shifts slightly, his energy more intense now. That was just the start, he says, a determined edge in his voice, as he rolls me onto my back. His intentions are unmistakable, his movements more forceful than before. I remind myself to stay composed, adjusting my body to match his rhythm. Yes, like that, I say, my tone calculated, guiding the situation while keeping my thoughts distant. Then quickly Jim suddenly stopped, looking at me intently. God. Alice? Alice Willows? From Asheville? Is that you? For a moment I'm dumbstruck, but then I reply. No, I'm Anna from the agency you called. My response is automatic, putting up the barriers around myself, protecting me from everything that I was. As far as I'm concerned now, Alice Willows never existed. Girls who give birth to their father's child aren't nice girls, they're bad, wicked. That's why Alice Willows doesn't exist anymore. Just Anna. Jim continued, speaking rapidly. You lived at 15 Woodstock Road in a blue house next to mine. We used to run a string between our bedrooms and use cans to talk to each other. You had a dog named Pickles. He grabbed my arm, pointing to a small scar by my elbow. Yeah. You got this scar when you crashed your bike into my mailbox. I squirm out from beneath him, covering my breasts defensively with my arms, trying desperately not to give any indication that what Jim is saying is true. I don't know who you are or who you've been talking to, but mister, you've got the wrong lady. Now if you want to finish, you've still got 20 minutes of your $400 left. But if you want to talk about your kindergarten days, then I'm out of here and I don't do refunds. I stoop to collect my dress and bra, heading for the door. If I can get out of the room, I'll dress in the stairwell. But he gets to the door just as I do, reaching over me with his hand on the door so I can't open it, and then he pulls me to him and kisses me. What on earth is he thinking and doing? I wrench my head sideways, breaking the kiss. Put me down, Jim. You're hurting me. Please, Jim, if you have any feelings for me, let me go. I'm crying freely now and just want to be alone so that I can put my past back in the bottle that Jim has pulled the stopper from. Please, Jim. He seems to have heard me and pulls out of me, putting me back on my feet, and then retreats to one of the armchairs and sits with his head in his hands, so I sit down on the floor with my back against the door. I suppose I could just open the door and leave, but I don't have the energy or the will and feel totally exhausted, both physically and mentally. I sniff and wipe my nose with the back of my hand and dry my eyes with a corner of my dress, trying to compose myself so that I can say something. I sniff again. Jim, the little girl you knew is gone. Alice is gone, and I'm not her, and she was never meant to be me. For a moment, I think he's going to say something, and I hold my hand up, signaling him to be quiet. I don't know how your life is. I hope it's okay, and you tell me that you're a successful lawyer, and I'm happy for you. But my life is okay, too. Yeah, sure. It's very different from yours, but it's okay, and it works for me, so please, Jim. Just let me have my life, and I'll let you have yours. I reach for my pocketbook and take out the $400 and manage a smile as I look at him. I don't usually do refunds, but since you're a friend, I stand and put the money back on the dresser where it was when I arrived. Goodbye, Jim. Be happy. And I turn, open the door, and walk out into the corridor. There is one couple that will have a tale they can share for a long time, as the sound of the door closing behind me makes them turn, and I leave Jim's room wearing my black high heels and clutching my dress, bra, and pocketbook to me. Not too exposed from the front, although pretty disheveled, but from the back totally unclad. That's the view of me that the couple waiting for the elevator got as I disappeared into the stairwell. Most people's instinct is to go down the stairs, but I went up to the next floor where I dressed, straightened my hair as best I could, and then opened the door to the 15th floor, walked to the elevator, and pressed the button for the lobby. It's all in people's perceptions, and the woman who walked from the elevator to the lobby door was smartly dressed, confident, perhaps going out for a late drink. But inside I was a churning mass of emotions. And as I unlocked my car and climbed in, I started to cry and sob, long racking sobs that shook my whole body. What had become of Alice, the happy little girl who played with Jim from next door? Almost without thinking, my mind slammed that door shut. Too risky, too much pain. I drove home, paid the babysitter, and went to bed. But I did one thing before I went to sleep. I called the hotel. Hi, could I leave a message at the desk for Mr. Morgan, Mr. Jim Morgan, staying in room 1423? I hoped he hadn't left. The desk clerk at the hotel is helpful. Sure, a message for Mr. Jim Morgan in 1423. Go ahead. Would you just say that Alice called, and would Mr. Morgan call me? I give a cell phone number. It's a second phone that I use only for voicemail, and I've already changed the recorded greeting. Hi, Jim, this is Alice. I'm sorry about last night. I guess it was a big shock for both of us. There are things you don't know about me that you won't like, and it's probably best you don't get involved. Leave a message if you want. I fell asleep almost immediately, totally exhausted, but it wasn't a restful sleep with too many painful memories forcing their way into my dreams, and I didn't get to my phone until later in the day. Just because I felt a wreck, the world doesn't stop, and I had to be up to see my daughter off to school, but I called in sick for my day job, phoned my agency, and canceled 3 appointments, and then went back to bed and slept till past noon. When I woke, I took a couple of headache tablets and showered, and it was only when I was getting some food and coffee that the enormity of what had happened last night hit home, and I dialed my voicemail. There was a message from Jim. Hi, Alice, it's Jim. I'm sorry too about last night. You said it best when you called it shocking. There's an understatement. Anyways, I'd like to see you again. I don't care if it's in public or private. It can be for coffee or at my office or... There's a pause before he continues. At a hotel, whatever you want. You have my number now, so please call me. Bye. I listened to Jim's message 3 times, crying the whole time. It is Jim. I know that. But it's been 22 years since I moved away, and a lot has happened in the meantime. I've changed, and it's likely that Jim has too. I was right when I told him on my answering machine that I'm not the little girl he knew anymore. But something has changed in me overnight, and I feel exhausted with the struggle to provide for my daughter and tired of being Anna. I dial his number, hoping that he doesn't pick up. The most I can face right now is leaving a message, and the relief when the beep comes to start my message is enormous. Hi, Jim. It's Alice. I don't know if this is a good idea for either of us, but I need to tell you some things about me. And then you can decide if you still want to know me. I'll meet you tomorrow at the north end of the park by the fountain at 11 a.m., and we can walk and talk. Bye. I was at the park early but stood back from the fountain, not knowing for sure if I would go through with the meeting. I figured if I got cold feet about it, I could just disappear, and maybe Jim would eventually give up on me. Maybe. But there was something inside me that told me it was time to face my demons. And maybe Jim would hold the mirror for me. After all my demons were inside me, in my head. I heard the bell from the town hall strike the hour. It was now or never. And summoning all my courage, I stepped out into the sunlight and walked over to the fountain. If Jim was here, he'd be able to see me. If he wasn't, then... well, then I just didn't know. Already it would be difficult to become Anna again. And I spotted Jim sitting on a bench and walked over to him. Hi. Jim stood. Hi. It wasn't going to be easy being with him. And as he stood, I turned and started to walk. Thankfully, he kept a respectful distance between us, and walking in the dappled sunlight of the park with Jim, it could have been any day from our childhood, but that was all long ago. We walked side by side, not close, just walking and talking. I told him what I thought he needed to know for now, how after my family and I had moved away, my mother had gotten ill and passed away when I was just 18. My father was devastated by the loss, and it seemed just natural that I would stay at home and look after him, running the house, doing the chores. We lived in a small town and I got pregnant. Don't ask how or who. And I didn't want to give him any more grief, so I moved out before people started talking. Settled here with my daughter and started working. Jim interrupted me. But who, how, I mean why? Didn't you get any help from the father? And why working? He said the word as if it were shameful. Why not a regular job? Now I had to lie. It doesn't matter who the father was, and in any case, he wasn't in a position to help. We walked in silence while I considered how to reply. From the way you said it, I gather you don't approve of me working. I used the same tone that Jim had used. But you seemed quite happy with the arrangement when you were with Anna in your hotel bedroom. This stopped Jim in his tracks, literally. He stood looking suitably embarrassed. I didn't mean it like that, He realized there was no taking back what he'd said. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I gave him a sad look, shaking my head. No, you shouldn't have said that, and thank you for apologizing. But you have to realize that women like Anna have lives just like everyone else. They have homes, children, pets. They shop for food, go to the movies, sometimes fall in love and marry. But like everyone else, they have to work. And for me, I'm independent. Work when it suits me, and earn enough money to give my daughter a good life and save for her college. And I doubt that Anna was your first time with someone who works for a living? Jim looked at his shoes like a child who's been told off. No, Anna wasn't the first. It was warm in the sun, and we stopped at a snack stand where Jim bought a couple of bottles of water. I swigged from the bottle of water that Jim had bought. So you see, Jim, I haven't had the kind of life that you've had, but I'm not unhappy. For the most part, my work is fine. But I guess that's the same for most people. And I don't owe anything to anybody. Jim stopped walking and stood, apparently thinking before replying. I think you are still the bright, loving, and beautiful girl that I once knew, who did what she needed to do. I thought that going through law school was tough, but it was nothing compared to what you must have gone through, and I admire you for that. He paused before continuing. The only two questions I have right now are, will you be my friend again? And what can I do to help you? I thought hard about how Jim had reacted to what I had told him before replying. Much of what he'd said to me was really nothing more than well-meaning words, and for a moment, I felt bad about feeling that way. But the life I'd chosen for myself had taught me to face life head-on, and in that gaze, there just wasn't any room for empty pleasantries. I could, of course, just carry on as Anna. After all, it pays well. I get to choose when I work, and to a degree, who I work with. I'm independent, answerable to no one, and have a cheerful, intelligent daughter who's doing well in school and is popular with her friends. But I know that as my daughter grows up, it will become increasingly difficult to lead the double life I do at the moment. What I really needed was for Jim to drop the lawyer front, offering to help, to solve my problems. I wanted to hear what the Jim I remembered from childhood would say, how that Jim would react. At last, I was ready to reply. You haven't asked me about my daughter. And I figured you would tell me about her when you were ready. I didn't want to pry. He looked away for a moment and then turned to face me. Why didn't you ever call me? Even though you used to beat me up as kids, I was always looking out for you. I was the first one there when that big storm blew down your tree fort trying to fix it. I was the one who carried you into my mom when you crashed your bike into our mailbox. Yes, I know that your situation was a bit bigger than all of that kid's stuff, but the point is that I was always there for you. Always have, and always will. When I played football in college, sometimes we played in front of 50,000 people and were on national TV. But I can only imagine that the eyes of a small town focused on you could have been even more intense than that. I'm not saying anything would have changed or would be different, but at least you would have had someone there for you. I'd have been there for you, Alice. I'd have been there for you. He turned and started walking. Jim's outburst caught me by surprise, and I realized that, just like me, he too had been bottling up a whole load of emotions. As he turned and started to walk away, I yelled after him. Her name is Jamie. I named her after you. Jim stopped in his tracks and turned. I could see his eyes filling with tears. You named her after me? But why? I mean, why didn't you say? He retraced his steps and put his arms around me, hugging me tight to him, and I hugged him back, and it was like all the years had rolled away and we're both kids again. There for each other without any cares in the world. I couldn't help myself and started to cry, sobbing into his shoulder. I couldn't tell you, Jim. Couldn't tell anyone. There's still a lot you don't know. I stepped back from him, looking at him. I've always loved you, Jim. Always. Still do. And suddenly I was smiling and laughing with the relief. Will you build us a treehouse again so we can be in it together? You, me and Jamie? Will you? Jim nods and kisses me, gently, tenderly. Yes, of course I will. Big enough for the three of us. Let's have dinner together, can we? Just Jim and Alice. I'd like that very much. I noticed that. The three of us. And I smiled at him. Yes, dinner tonight. I'd like that too. I made 2 phone calls later that afternoon, one to my babysitter and one to my agency. I needed my babysitter because I was going out on a date with Jim, and the call to my agency was to tell them not to take any bookings for me for the next couple of days. I took a bath scented with bubbles and looked through my wardrobe. Each dress held the same memory because each dress had served the same purpose, Anna and her clients. But even so, there was one dress that was now different from any of the others, the black dress that I'd worn when I went to Jim's room at his hotel. I slipped it on over my bra and panties, smoothing it across my belly and half turning to look at how it fitted across my hips. Just perfect. Then, with black high heels, a matching pocketbook, and red lipstick, I was ready for Jim, and I hoped he was ready for me. I heard his car pull up outside my apartment and went out to meet him. Jim was sweet as he opened the car door for me. The car smelled of new, expensive leather, and it mingled with his aftershave in a manly sort of way. I felt quite nervous, as I'd never done this before with Jim. We'd had sleepovers and outings as kids, but never a date, a real grown-up date. I glanced at him and guessed he was nervous too, and without thinking, reached over and covered his hand with mine as he used the gear shift. He glanced at me and smiled. You know, I almost kissed you once. Remember when we were like 9 and we slept in the treehouse that night and it started to thunder and lightning? You were scared and I put my arm around you and told you it was going to be okay. I almost leaned in and kissed you then, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. I gave Jim's hand a squeeze, hoping that perhaps tonight he'd kiss me as Alice, and not as Anna. He hadn't told me where we were going, saying he wanted to surprise me. But as we pulled into the curb and the valet parking service guy opened the doors for us, I knew it was somewhere special. I was hungry and realized I'd hardly eaten a thing in the last 48 hours. So I was looking forward to our meal together. What would happen after that, I just didn't know. But I hoped the evening wouldn't just finish with the meal. My dress had risen up my thighs as I turned in my seat to get out of the car, and I noticed Jim taking a look. He recovered in a very gentlemanly way as I smoothed the hem down. To steal a line from a song, "My darling, you look wonderful tonight. And since this is our first real date, we should do this right, shouldn't we?" he said, offering his hand to help me out of the car. I took his hand and surprised him by kissing him lightly on the lips. They say that lightning never strikes twice. Do you believe that? I wiped my lipstick from his lips with my thumb. Better look our best, huh? I smiled at him. It all felt so natural, so easy with Jim, but inside me, in a deeper place, there was the nagging concern that this couldn't last, that somehow my past would catch up with me. What would Jim say if one of my former clients recognized me? The idea horrified me, and I could imagine the scene. "Hi, Anna. How are you?" they might say, winking and nodding knowingly at Jim. "Enjoy your evening, buddy." How would Jim react to that? I knew that at some stage I would have to tell him everything about my past, all the painful details, and how it shaped who I am today. His lawyer's mind wouldn't let that go, and anything left unsaid would eventually prove corrosive. We certainly turned a few heads as we walked in, but then we make a good couple. Jim looked in his element. Tall, good-looking, well-dressed, with an outward air of confidence and a stunning woman by his side. I tried to relax as we were seated and ordered a couple of cocktails. As we sipped our drinks, I could see Jim trying to be discreet as he glanced at my cleavage. Of course, I've been in this position many times before, and can tell when someone is admiring me, but I felt a sense of uncertainty. Is he seeing me as Anna, the confident woman he encountered a couple of nights ago, or as Alice, the woman he asked out to dinner? It's certain, though, that when two close friends share a moment like this, it changes the relationship forever. Jim will have to adjust to that. We're no longer little Jim and little Alice. We are grown-up Jim and grown-up Alice, and that brings with it a shift. The connection we had a short while ago was something new for both of us, and it leaves us both figuring out what comes next. I sipped my drink again, looking at Jim over the rim until he eventually looked up and our eyes met. "Alice has certainly grown up, hasn't she?" I said, putting my glass down and taking his hands in mine across the table. "It's okay, Jim. You don't need to feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. I don't mind." I laughed softly and continued. "You've already seen so much more of me, so a little glance won't hurt." I released his hands, leaning forward slightly toward him. "We need to understand where we are and what we're doing. If we're still little Jim and little Alice, just good friends, just like we were before, then that's fine. I'm glad. No, I'm really happy we found each other again. But if that's where we are, it might not be appropriate for you to be staring at me like that. However, if we're grown-up Jim and grown-up Alice, then you need to be comfortable enough to tell me you like how I look. Tell me that you find me attractive. But it has to be to me, Alice, not Anna. Do you understand what I'm saying?" I knew the words might catch him off guard, but he needed to decide what kind of relationship we were going to have, and I needed to know. Jim paused, taking in what I had just said. Then he gently took my hands in his and leaned in to kiss each one. "You have an amazing body, and I want you." He leaned back a little, still holding my hands, smiling with a hint of satisfaction on his face. Then he kissed my hands again, this time giving a playful touch between my fingers. Jim's gesture told me something important. While he seemed genuinely happy to reconnect, the way he touched me made it clear that he was still drawn to the past and to the woman I used to be. There's a fine line between intimacy and crossing boundaries, and Jim had just blurred that line. I felt a wave of emotion rise, but I didn't let him see it. Instead, I turned on my charm, something I've mastered over the years, and in response, I gently kissed his fingers, letting the moment stretch out before pulling away with a soft smile. "Two can play at this game." "Think we could take this further later?" I said with a playful wink. "I think we've already moved past the formalities, don't you?" Though my words were light-hearted, inside I was aching, wondering if Jim ever thought of us as just friends. It could have been so simple, but the tension we shared now was impossible to ignore. The food arrived and we shifted our focus to the meal, and by the time the check came, we were far removed from the complexities of our past. We were just Alice and Jim, two old friends who had found each other again as adults. Yet there was an unspoken change in the air, a shift that neither of us could deny. The question hung between us. Would I always be Anna, or could I truly be Alice? I watched as Jim handed the waitress a generous tip. Her glance said it all. A handsome man showing off for his companion. In some ways, I couldn't deny the excitement of what we were doing. Jim was undeniably attractive, and I could feel the chemistry between us. But I wondered which version of me he was seeing. Was I still the woman from the past? Or had I become someone new? "Shall we continue this evening at my place?" he asked, breaking my thoughts. I laughed softly, caught up in the moment and the excitement of the evening. "Yes, I'd like that." As we walked out of the restaurant, I slipped my hand under Jim's jacket at the small of his back and kissed his ear, whispering just loud enough for a few people nearby to hear. "Take me home and make love with me." On the ride to Jim's place, he puts his hand on my thigh and then slides my dress up a bit. I can see he's looking at my legs. We pull into the driveway at his house and head inside, and as soon as we get in the door, he pulls me to him and kisses me, his tongue diving into my mouth, probing and swirling against mine as his hands grope my butt. There's no doubt who Jim thinks he's with now and what he wants to do. If he had any thoughts of spending the evening with Alice, that's long gone, and what he says next just confirms this. "So, do you want something to drink? A tour? Or do you just want to go and make love in the bedroom?" He's with Anna, and he wants her, and this time he's not paying. I wonder if I can shock him into realizing what's going on here. An hour or so ago, we were Jim and Alice, friends who had just found each other again. And then suddenly Jim is with Anna, and all thoughts of trying to build on our friendship have disappeared in a rush of testosterone. I'm so used to playing the role of Anna that what I say next comes easily but deep inside. In that part of me that I've kept locked away for so long, I wish it was Alice speaking. She wouldn't say what Anna's about to say. "Why waste time going to the bedroom? Let's do it here." And I reach for his belt and tug at the buckle, loosening it enough for me to push my hand down the front of his chinos. Kneeling in front of him, I complete the business of undoing his belt and tug at his pants, freeing him. He moans, slips his fingers into my hair. Then, unexpectedly, he stops. "Alice, stop. I can't do this." I sit back on my heels, feeling the cold hardness of the hallway floor beneath me, watching as Jim walks into the sitting room. While it's impossible to truly know another person's thoughts, I have a pretty good idea of what he's feeling in this moment. After a few minutes, I stand and follow him, certain that we both have things to say, things to listen to. The silence between us is thick, and it feels like we've both been holding our breath. Jim turns as I enter the living room, almost surprised I haven't left. He opens his mouth to speak, then hesitates, his words caught somewhere between apology and confusion. "I'm sorry about that," he begins, but then trails off, looking for the right thing to say. We stand there for a moment, just looking at each other, both waiting for the other to break the silence.